Look, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think Mark was a little bit in the wrong in this episode. Actually, scratch that. He was all the way in the wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Mark as a character. Like, he's great. Mark is great.
I'm rocking with Mark because Mark is rocking with us.
But you have to admit, in this show, more than a couple of times, he's been a little bit annoying with his beliefs and some of the choices that he makes. And episode 2 of season 3 has probably been his most annoying moment yet. Since this episode aired, I've seen a lot of fans on Twitter debating over who was actually in the right in this episode. Was it Mark or was it Cecil? Well, you already know where I stand on this one. I'm not making this video to convince you which character was in the right or wrong. Truthfully, I don't really care what you believe. But seeing this debate really got me thinking about another topic regarding this show. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm LDJ Writes, a science fiction and fantasy author. And I've actually written a gritty, dark superhero trilogy of my own in the past, so I feel like I'm pretty qualified to talk about this TV show in this way. Now, one of the best things that Invincible does that sets it apart from other shows that are similar is its portrayal of morally gray characters. Anti-heroes seem to be absolutely everywhere in superhero media recently. We're talking Thanos, Deadpool, Nick Fury, Amanda Waller, Homelander, Billy Butcher, tons of anti-heroes, tons of vigilantes, tons of morally gray characters. They're all over media. In Invincible, we've even got Omni-Man and Cecil Steadman. These characters walk the fine line between evil and good. They keep us on our toes and they keep things exciting. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down what separates Cecil Steadman in particular from his counterparts. Now first, let's give a bit of context on who Cecil Steadman in Invincible really is. He's not your typical morally gray character. He's not a hero, and he's not a villain either. But he's something far more interesting. He's a man who's willing to make the impossible choices when no one else will. He's a man who's willing to make the impossible decisions for the sake of humanity's survival. Now, in Invincible, Mark sees the world in black and white, good and evil, right and wrong. To Mark, heroes are supposed to help people, not cut deals with criminals and killers. But Cecil, well, he's got a bit of a different philosophy. Now, what makes Cecil Steadman such a well-written, morally gray character? Well, it's that he's not evil. He's necessary. Every choice he makes comes with a cost, but from his perspective, there's simply no other way. I mean, think about it. Earth is constantly under threat in this show. There's Viltrumites, kaiju, alien invasions. I mean, this guy Cecil can't catch a break. Regular superheroes aren't always enough. I mean, we just watched Mark and Eve get their asses kicked by some bugs and Doc Seismic. Doc Seismic? Really? Look, the fact of the matter here is Cecil does what needs to be done, even if it makes him the bad guy in Mark's eyes. Cecil justifies his actions through utilitarianism, which is the needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few. If sacrificing a few lives ensures the survival of the world, Cecil Steadman's gonna do it. No questions asked. It's not about being right or wrong to Cecil. It's about saving the world, something that Mark does not completely understand yet. But hold on. Here's what makes Invincible so smart and separates it from other superhero shows. The show doesn't tell you how to feel about Cecil or his decisions. It presents his actions without a verdict. Instead, it lets us, the audience, wrestle with the same impossible choices he's forced to make in this show. I mean, none of us could do what Cecil does. The weight on his shoulders is far too heavy for any of us to bear. So, the question becomes, does saving the world justify anything? Or is Cecil crossing lines that should never be crossed? Now, I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into episode 2 of season 3 of Invincible. On the surface, it's pretty clear how this episode is framing Cecil. It's clear that he's the villain, especially in Mark's eyes. Mark, as the hero, he's the protagonist. He's the one that we're viewing the story through. He's the one we're rooting for. So naturally, we're automatically going to side with him, and we're going to view Cecil as the villain. But if you really pay attention, if you really watch what's going on your screen, Invincible does something not many other shows do. It makes us fully question if Mark is truly in the right here. First, let's look at how the show frames Cecil visually. In this confrontation, we see every decision that Cecil makes presented in a cold, calculated way. Camera angles are crucial here. When Cecil speaks, he's often shown in medium to wide shots, standing tall, unbothered, giving him this larger-than-life presence. But Mark's usually framed in tighter, more intimate shots. Close-ups that show his frustration, his confusion, and his raw emotion. Mark is the good guy, right? But this is where it gets interesting. Mark's emotional reaction to the scene is everything. He's angry, hurt, betrayed. And as the audience, we feel all of this through him. I mean, he's the protagonist. He's supposed to be the one we root for. So we naturally want to side with him against Cecil, using murderers and criminals to help save the world. But this is where the show shows its worth. The writing doesn't let us stay comfortable in this moment or in this decision. It keeps making us ask, is Mark really in the right here? Is it really so wrong for Cecil to make the choices he's made if it means saving the world? I mean, sure, the people that Cecil employed in the last episode weren't the greatest, but if he hadn't done that, who knows what would have happened? I mean, all of the heroes on Earth were pretty much going to die if he didn't step in. I mean, isn't the greater good worth the sacrifice? It's kind of like that age-old trolley question. Would you save one person but let a bunch of other people die? Or would you save a group of people knowing that you're sentencing another person to die? It's an impossible decision, but someone has to make these decisions in Invincible's world. And that person is Cecil Steadman. Cecil's justifications for his actions are pretty straightforward. If we're going to survive, sometimes you need to get your hands dirty. Cecil's not a superhero. He doesn't have any powers. He doesn't have any fancy well, he has a bunch of fancy gadgets actually, but my point is he doesn't have any powers. But he is a leader, and as a leader, he knows that there are no perfect solutions. He makes tough calls that people like Mark can't, or simply won't understand. To Cecil, it's not about being a hero or a villain, it's about being practical. And that's what makes him such an interesting character to me. He's not cold because he wants to be, he's cold because he knows what it takes. The show doesn't paint him as an outright villain, but it also doesn't paint him as an outright hero either. It also makes us question if what he's doing is really wrong, or if we're just seeing it through Mark's eyes. So, the question that this episode leaves us with is Cecil the villain because he's willing to make the hard choices no one else wants to make? What makes Invincible stand out is its refusal to give us easy answers. Throughout this episode, and really throughout this entire series, the show presents both Cecil and Mark's perspectives fairly. Cecil isn't a cartoonish villain, and Mark isn't always right just because he's the hero. Now, this is where the genius of the writing comes into play. Cecil is allowed to be a morally gray character, not a bad guy with good intentions like Thanos was portrayed as. And here's the thing. The show doesn't treat him like he's making excuses for being evil. His decisions, while ruthless, come from a place of pure survival. The stakes are so high and his choices are rooted in pure cold logic. It's not about wanting to hurt people, it's about doing what Cecil believes needs to be done. Let's compare him to Mark. Mark is often emotional and very, very idealistic. He reacts based on what he feels is right and wrong. But, as we all know, the world is not that simple. Invincible allows both characters to make their case, but it doesn't try to force us into believing either side. It's about creating space for debate, which is what the best shows tend to do. That's also what makes Cecil feel so real as a character. His actions are grounded in his personal understanding of the world as he knows it. Cecil understands that the world is harsh. Mark just doesn't get it yet. Another thing that Invincible does well is that it doesn't make Mark out to seem righteous. Mark is not above criticism. His ideals and beliefs actually get in the way a lot of the time. I mean, this guy wanted to go to college and totally blow off being a superhero. I know that's like a common trope in these superhero coming of age stories, but come on man, you're a superhero. You've got stuff to do. But this is why I wanted to talk about how Invincible handles its moral ambiguity within its characters. Other superheroes often treat this moral ambiguity as a punchline or a joke, or it just doesn't take it seriously at all. I'm looking at you, Deadpool and The Boys. I love those shows and that movie, by the way, but I just had to say it. For example, other shows or movies often show the government as the big bad or just another obstacle for the hero to step over. These figures are often portrayed as cartoonishly evil, righteous, or just plain annoying. They're the bad guy, and that's all they are, the bad guy. There's no room for understanding and there's no conversation to be had. And on the flip side, the hero is just good. What they're doing is 100% correct and there's no room to question them, there's no room to criticize them, and we just all feel like the hero is making the right decision all the time. I feel like Invincible actually doesn't do this that much, and that's why I've been so drawn to this series as a whole. It doesn't do any heavy lifting for us, and it definitely doesn't give us any easy decisions to make. Invincible allows its characters, especially Cecil Steadman, to be complex and multi-dimensional. It also makes us question what we truly believe in. It's in these moments that Invincible shines. Even as the audience, we're forced to confront our own beliefs. This show doesn't provide us with a simple answer. It doesn't spoon feed us what's right and what's wrong. Instead, we're left with the uncomfortable reality that sometimes good intentions are just not enough. And sometimes, doing what's necessary isn't always what's right. So, rather than giving us the traditional good guy versus bad guy narrative, Invincible challenges us to think critically about the choices that we make as individuals and what it truly means to be a hero or a villain, or if there's space to be something in between. Alright, so let's recap. Cecil Steadman's character is one of the more compelling and morally gray characters in Invincible. He's not just a cold strategist or villain in disguise, he's a leader who understands the true cost of power and the weight of his decisions. Throughout the series, we watch him make tough choice after tough choice. Decisions that might seem ruthless or downright evil on the surface are clearly pragmatic and driven by a need for survival. He's trying to save the world here, people. No amount of heroic speeches is stopping the Lizard League or Doc Seismic. What makes Cecil so interesting is that he's not always likable. His actions are rooted in a deep sense of what it means to be a leader. Invincible doesn't just show us the cool fights or the flashy animation, even though those are pretty nice. It also shows us what kind of toll leadership can take. It also shows us the sacrifices that come with power and the moral compromises that come with it. We see this clearly in Cecil, and it's why his character stands out in the sea of morally gray characters throughout superhero media. Ultimately, Invincible doesn't give us any easy answers. It leaves us with the hard question: was Cecil right, or did he go too far? Can we justify the hard choices of leadership, or is there a line that should never be crossed? This is what makes Invincible's handling of morality truly exceptional. It doesn't settle for black or white answers. It challenges us to grapple with the complexities of power, duty, and the cost of being a leader. And in doing so, it opens up the door for deeper conversations about morality, responsibility, and justice. So, now I want to hear from you guys. Did Cecil make the right decision? Or was Mark actually in the right and Cecil crossed the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going, guys. Invincible's only gonna pick up from here, and I can't wait for you guys to see these next couple of episodes because I've read most of the comics and this thing gets crazy. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe for more commentary and breakdown videos like this. I've been LDJ Writes, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.